Hey guys, tonight we're riding back in time. Cloaks billowing, hooves thundering, and breakfast very likely to involve cold porridge. You're about to spend one full day as a medieval knight. And fair warning, between the freezing castle walls, the armor that feels like a personal prison, and how often you'll be expected to look heroic for just showing up. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. Still, that doesn't mean we can't enjoy pretending for a while. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The stone around you sweats with cold. Not actually sweat, but condensation from the damp breath of pre-dawn air. You stir beneath heavy covers that smell faintly of old straw and older dogs. Your chamber is not particularly luxurious. Walls of unadorned stone. A tiny fire that lost courage hours ago. One small window slit, called an arrow loop, leaks in the icy lavender light of approaching dawn. Your name doesn't matter right now. For tonight, you are a sir. A knight of middling wealth and moderate fame. You own a few dozen acres, owe fealty to an imposing lord, and you've bled a time or two in his name. You sit up, carefully. Your shoulders ache. Your knees click. You were in a practice melee yesterday afternoon, and one of the younger knights decided to show off, using you as his canvas. Your squire, 12, and eternally inconvenient, tiptoes in. He doesn't knock. They never do. He's already dressed, already holding out your clothes like you're made of glass, and must be dressed with infinite care. To be fair, you're expected at morning mass before sunrise. No time to waste. He lays out your woolen tunic, linen undershirt, hose, and thick belt. These are your civilian layers, still high quality, but you're not jousting grandma today, so no armor yet. Cotton won't be available in much of Europe for centuries, so linen is your breathable bestie. You stand, slightly wobbling, and start the slow process of layering cloth over already bruised skin. The wind shrieks suddenly through the window slit. It's winter, technically almost spring, but that doesn't mean warmth. You shiver as your squire knots a cloak over your shoulders. It's woven with your colors, blue and silver stripes, and a small embroidered family crest, a falcon and a crooked tree. Your heraldry is, unfortunately, not the stuff of legends. Shoes, more like reinforced leather socks, go on last. You twist your foot to test them. Still damp from yesterday's snow. Great. Your castle, well, keep, to be more accurate, is compact. A central tower surrounded by a crumbling wall, a tiny courtyard, and 4 guards who sometimes forget which side of the drawbridge's winch lever is up. It's a modest fief by noble standards, but it's yours. Sort of. You were granted stewardship by a greater lord who holds the real title. So you technically own this land until you displease someone higher up. You descend the spiral stair of the tower, each step echoing like a creeper in a haunted house. The air smells like smoke, mutton drippings, and damp straw. The guard in the lower hall salutes you lazily. "My lord," he yawns. He has 3 teeth. You nod back. No time for decorum. Mass is held in the chapel, barely more than a wooden lean-to against the east curtain wall. You breathe little clouds of steam as you approach, A priest with permanently arched eyebrows and a suspicious lack of warmth waits inside. There's already a handful of people kneeling. Your steward, one of the manor's older knights, and a peasant couple who probably just want to get warm without anyone noticing. The service drones on in Latin. You kneel until your knees mutiny. The incense suffocates a sneeze back into your face. You cross yourself reflexively, wondering if God is listening or just rolling his eyes. Outside, a cock crows belatedly, late to rise, just like your squire. A brief note. Historians still argue whether every knight really attended daily mass or just when their lord was watching. Many likely skipped it. You? Well, skipping means explaining yourself in front of the bishop and possibly paying a fine. So, for now, you participate, even if the experience is approximately as spiritual as folding laundry in a crypt. Afterward, you're pulled aside by the steward to discuss the stores of grain. Spoiler alert, they're low. And whether the new mason can be trusted not to embezzle stones. Yes, stones. Some of them are valuable, okay? A few minutes later, you're found in the great hall, such as it is, hunched over a wooden table, steaming cup of weak ale in hand. Breakfast includes chunks of brown bread, suspiciously chewy cheese, and a bowl of warm porridge that goes cold almost instantly. At least today, there are figs, preserved in vinegar and honey. They're tangy and almost spicy. Your squire tries to steal one, and you gently flick his fingers away, like a bored cat. He'll get figs when he's been promoted to knight, or at least stops tripping over his own sword belt. The conversation around you, and there is always conversation, small keeps or echo chambers, turns to rumors from the next village. Someone swears they saw a three-eyed goat, and now half the town thinks the devil is fishing for souls. You'd roll your eyes, but honestly, this will be the least weird part of your day. Some of these people still believe in forest spirits. One guy claims he wrestled a will-o'-the-wisp once, and your own mother allegedly buried an old horseshoe under the door to keep out troll fog. Real medieval science. You finish your bread, drink the last of the bitter ale, and stand. Daylight's peeking through the narrow, stained glass slits above the stairs, turning dust motes into slow, golden snow. The day has barely begun, but your shoulders already ache, and you suspect your squire accidentally boiled your riding gloves again. Ah well. Today you might tilt in the courtyard, chase a chicken thief, or ride off to play peacekeeper in the next village. Or maybe you'll get ambushed by brigands who think you're richer than you look. Joke's on them. You inhale the cold, slightly metallic air. Outside, armor clinks. Hooves clatter. The morning light flares across the frost-bitten flagstones. Whether you're ready or not, your nightly duties await. Your squire scurries ahead, arms full of what looks like half your wardrobe. You follow at a pace that's more of a weary stomp than a noble stride. Even though you're not dressing for combat yet, the amount of layering required just to step outside would impress even the most prepared modern skier. And medieval fashion? Let's just say it's less style and more survival with flair. You begin with the most basic underlayer, a long linen shirt, softened over many washings, although it still manages to feel like sandpaper in places. It serves as both undergarment and nighttime wear. Not that you've washed it recently. Laundry day is more of a laundry fortnight. Next come the hose. Long woolen stockings that make you feel somewhat like a tightly wrapped sausage. They're itchy. Everything's itchy. A belt helps hold them up, and to confuse things further, there's a codpiece. Yes, that medieval fashion trend was real. Though it hasn't reached full Renaissance ridiculousness yet, yours is still, well, functional, at best. Over the shirt goes a padded garment called the gambeson. It's thick, quilted, and designed to catch some of the shock of a sword blow. It's also surprisingly heavy on its own. When you wear nothing else, it sort of feels like walking around wrapped in a mattress. But today, you won't need plate armor, so it keeps you warm underneath your tunic. Yours is dyed a deep blue, one of your house colors, embroidered with the smallest possible falcon on the left breast. You paid a lot for that tiny bird. It looks more like an anxious pigeon. Now comes the real status symbol, your surcoat. Think of it as a fashionable billboard that screams, "I matter." It bears your full coat of arms. Yes, the noble falcon and the awkward crooked tree, and flows down past your knees. Bad surcoat day? The whole court side-eyes you. Good surcoat? Suddenly you're knight of the month. And of course, the belt. An ornate leather affair, inset with bronze studs, and a dagger hanging from the side like it's for decoration. It's not. Unfortunately, it seems to be ever so slightly tighter than yesterday. Maybe you had one too many trenchers at last night's feast. Or maybe wool shrinks. Yeah, let's go with that. Your squire fusses about your shoes. Or rather, your poulens. These fashionable, pointed-toe leather shoes were once banned in some places for being too extravagant, though yours are on the modest side. Still, they do add 3 points to appearance and subtract 5 from mobility. Walk too fast, and you could trip over your own footwear. Fancy things, yes, but for a quick sword draw, not ideal. Speaking of fringe fashion, did you know some knights actually dusted themselves with perfumed powders before donning armor to keep body odor at bay? Bathing wasn't daily. Let's not kid ourselves. But the upper class didn't just roll in mud either. You spritz something from a tiny bottle onto your neck, lavender and something, and hope it smothers the scent of boiled horse blanket that seems to follow you after every training day. As you adjust the collar of your tunic, you catch sight of your reflection in a polished copper dish. Not bad. Rugged, noble, maybe a bit too squinty, but still battle-worn, with just enough pathos that traveling bards might write about you, or make you the villain. Either way, fame is fame. By now, your squire is attempting to lace up your sleeves. Badly. His fingers fumble, and you resist the very real urge to lace them yourself. He's learning. Slowly. This is the kid who once tried fitting you with reversed greaves. You clanked all the way to the stables before noticing. Dressing up in medieval society isn't just about comfort. It's about messaging. Are your colors bright and intact? No holes or sweat stains? Are your laces even and your brooch in place? Because every noble, servant, and skeptical bard is watching. Clothes weren't just outfits. They were social signals you wore like a resume on your chest. Historians still argue whether everyday knights took pride in their daily fashion or reserved their best threads for tournaments and court appearances. Some accounts describe battle-hardened veterans in torn tunics and dusty hose. Others show dandified knights practically dripping with ornament, even on hunting trips. You probably fall somewhere in between. Fashion, not as a hobby, but as battlefield politics. Looking sharp keeps rivals guessing and allies respectful. And yes, Today you're mostly dressing for court and training. No full steel plate yet, but your gear is battle ready. Now comes the sword, a weighty, double-edged beauty your father left you. Its pommel bears your crest, and it balances so well you could slice open a hanging apple mid-gallop. Probably, one day, after several tries and fewer apples, you sling the belt across your hips and feel that familiar tug, the not-so-subtle reminder of where your true weight lies. Knight or not, that sword demands responsibility. You sheathe it with care, the leather creaking as it slides into place. Hey, one quirky tidbit while we're here. Evidence suggests that some medieval knights kept small, personalized tokens tucked under their tunic. Tiny carved saints, scraps of love letters, even dried flower petals laced into belts. Superstition? Maybe. But war and love, they were often two sides of the same coin. You tap the pouch at your hip. Your own lucky charm is a coin worn nearly smooth. From your first campaign. You'd never admit it aloud, but you rub it before every duel. Finally, your squire hoists a mirror, or what passes for one. Polished bronze so badly worn, it shows more personality than reflection. But you catch enough of your outline to offer a nod. You look knightly. That peculiar mix of functional and dramatic that sells paintings and terrifies chicken thieves. Outside, the courtyard shuffles to life. Hooves on cobble, dogs barking, a barrel being rolled over flagstones. The wind kicks up again, snapping 3 pennants on the highest wall. Yours, your lord's, and the blazon of some neighboring noble who keeps overstaying his hunts. You step out into the cold, everything feeling just stiff enough to be annoying. The air bites your cheeks, but it's clear, full of that sharp breath of iron scent that always spells action. You're dressed, prepped, and looking untouchably noble. And just as you step onto the frosty stone, your squire clears his throat and mutters, my lord, you forgot your gloves. You look down, bare hands. I was testing you, you say. Right, totally planned. You slide the gloves on, finally, and flex your fingers inside the stiff leather. Lined with wool and reinforced at the palms, they're not just for warmth, but for grip, too. Holding a reins or a sword with numbed hands? That's a quick way to say farewell to your fingers. You nod curtly at your squire, whose face already says he knows you forgot. Still, he doesn't comment. Smart lad. Outside, the world is waking up with you. Smoke trickles from the keep's chimney, wafting over the stable roof like a lazy ghost. A few chickens dash underfoot, chased by a red-faced kitchen boy wielding a broom with far more zeal than aim. You sidestep the drama, just barely, and head toward the chapel again. Yes, you already had Mass. But now comes the real morning gathering, casual and strategic. Nobles and positioned servants trickle in to catch word on daily matters. It's part religious habit, part unofficial council, part nobles' coffee hour, minus the coffee, and with way more gossip. Inside, the flickering light of devotional candles gives the chapel a golden aura. The altar gleams faintly with tarnished silver. The air's thick with incense again, frankincense likely, and the whole space hums with whispers, Latin rustlings, and an occasional throat clearing from Father Aldrich, the permanently unimpressed priest. You take a quiet seat near the front, posture composed, hands resting over your belt. A few other knights murmur behind you, exchanging local news. One claims there was a brawl over a sheep last night. Another whispers about the neighboring lord's daughter being spotted with a courier after sundown. Scandalous, apparently. You're just wondering if the sheep was okay. Your steward shuffles in next to you and murmurs that the spring planting may be a week behind schedule. You nod thoughtfully and completely forget what he said when someone mentions fresh figs arriving from the port town to the south. How decadent. This early in the year? Someone's showing off. And then, like clockwork, she enters. Lady Marjorie. Now, here's the complicated thing about being a knight. Adoration isn't limited to bloodshed and honor. There are courtly expectations. Love, loyalty, the kind where gazes last too long and poems take on heroic metaphors for freckles. Lady Marjorie, in her green embroidered cloak and impossibly tidy braids, represents this genteel chaos. She glides in without looking directly at anyone, which of course means every knight looks directly at her. You glance too, begrudgingly, just once. Okay, twice, maybe longer than is professionally knightly. Her family arrives next, their plump dog waddling behind them with regal arrogance. You clear your throat, refocus, and rise as the priest begins a brief morning blessing. It's informal, no kneeling this time, but still delivered in firm Latin, laced with lots of hand gestures and just enough ambiguity to cover blessing crops and divine rat removal. When it's over, there's no rush to leave. Like any workplace hallway today, people linger. Whispers turn to small talk to subtle posturing. You mingle among the lesser nobles, stopping occasionally to bow graciously to a passing lady or throw in a rehearsed chuckle at someone's forced joke. One man, older and slightly musty-smelling, insists on describing the mole that's growing on his prized hunting dog's leg. You smile, you nod, and mentally escape by reviewing sword forms in your head. And then, as you pour yourself a cup of spiced wine from a nearby table, yes, it's before noon, no judgment in medieval times, you're collared by your captain-at-arms, a gruff, partially deaf man with a gray beard, a permanent scowl, and a limp from the siege of Dinan. There's a new recruit showing off in the training yard. He grumbles. Fancy boots, sword like he's storming Jerusalem. You'll want to see this. Oh, wonderful. Another nephew of someone important, here to prove himself by accidentally stabbing a bale of hay in front of 8 people. You sigh, hand the wine cup to your squire with a quick, "Don't drink that," and follow. Along the way, there's a quick detour to the kitchens. Yes, again. You're a knight, but you're also a human being, and hunger waits for no title. You pinch a slice of bread and cheese from a passing tray with all the grace of a fox who pays taxes. Your fellow knight, Sir Jorund, claps you on the back just in time to make you drop the cheese. Curse him and his large, friendly Viking hands. Speaking of snack matter, did you know that medieval nobles sometimes flavored their bread with rosewater? Sounds fancy, but most of the time it was to cover up the taste of stale flour. You chew thoughtfully and try not to question the smell coming off that last bite. Back to the courtyard. The moment you step outside, you hear it. Clang, clang, clang. Someone is very proud of their new sword. Even the chickens have stopped running around long enough to stare. In the center stands a young knight, barely past squirehood, sweating in full practice mail, swinging at a wooden post with flourish and force. The blade bites deep, again and again. He pauses, turns slowly, and looks pointedly in your direction. Oh no. He's definitely trying to impress you. "Good swing," you say, dully. He beams. You tilt your head and add, "Though you'll shatter your wrist if you strike that way in full plate." He blinks. Clearly, no one's told him that yet. A healthy note on chivalric tradition. Many knights were expected to act as role models, not just in war, but in behavior, language, and even mentoring fresh recruits like this dramatic peacock here. You sigh and walk over, gently correcting his stance, adjusting his grip, and explaining that, despite what epic ballads claim, real duels are fast, ugly, and rarely include twirls. Your enemy isn't a puppet, you add. He doesn't care how good your last swing looked. The younger knight nods, somewhat chastened. Your captain-at-arms grunts approvingly and points at a nearby pile of hay bales. Lift those, with one arm, both sides. You arch an eyebrow. Chivalry builds from the arms up. He deadpans. Your squire snorts behind you. You pretend not to hear it. Before heading toward your usual spot on the training grounds, you take a look out over the courtyard. It's more lively now. Stable boys corralling horses, cooks dumping vegetable scraps into barrels, guards manning the battlements in shifts. Flags snap, smoke rises, and all throughout, the hum of purpose, the machine of a medieval keep turning its slow, stubborn gears. You live in this rhythm, each day shaped by prayers, posture, ritual, and training. Chained to duty, maybe, but there's something oddly comforting in the predictability. You tug your gloves tighter. Time to get sweaty. You take your place in the sandy heart of the courtyard, boots crunching on yesterday's stomped down dirt. The late morning sun filters over the high walls, barely warming anything yet, but enough to make you blink up at the sparkle of the pennants flapping overhead. It's time. Training hour. No one tells you to begin. You're a knight. This is your routine. Besides, your body already knows what's coming, even if your joints complain in advance. You start simple. Footwork. Shifting your weight. Pivoting on the balls of your feet. Reversing direction as if dodging an invisible strike. All the while, you draw and sheath your sword in smooth arcs, training muscle memory tighter with every repetition. Every swing should feel familiar, not flamboyant. You've no time for theatrical flourishes today, only clean, practical cuts, horizontal, diagonal, downward strikes with tight recovery. Your sword sings through the air, the edge cutting wind even before it hits anything at all. "Posture, my lord," your captain of arms calls. Right. Always the posture. You adjust your stance. Plant your trailing foot slightly wider. Lower your center. Again. Swing. Again. Block. Nearby, the captain works a few younger trainees through their paces, clashing blunt swords and grunting under heaving chainmail. Meanwhile, your squire loops rope into a target dummy. Slow, careful work so he doesn't get clobbered again like last week when someone missed the target and hit him. Dust swirls around your calves. A stable boy sneezes behind a stack of wood. A dog chases its own tail with absolute, unwarranted confidence. Meanwhile, beneath your sweat-slick surcoat, your shoulder blades begin to burn. Just as it should be. Here's the thing most people forget. Knights train constantly. Glory in battle doesn't come from Pinterest-worthy armor or flowing locks of hair blowing in the wind. It's forged in repetition. Most knights kept up daily martial exercises, not just to keep fit, but so they didn't embarrass themselves or get impaled on the battlefield. Whether it was sword drills, lance work, or grappling, A knight's routine was more CrossFit than court drama. And yes, grappling. Because swords get dropped, or knocked away, or stuck in something that doesn't let go. Which is why you now shift to hand-to-hand forms. You shrug off your sword belt with a satisfying clink, and square up with Sir Jorund, your usual sparring partner, broad-shouldered, red-cheeked, and the only man you trust to punch you in the face and not wake up chained in a dungeon. He grins at you. First to yield, or first to wrestle the other into the pig pens? Let's try not to traumatize the pigs today. He lunges. You counter. Your boots skid over dust. You twist, duck, catch his shoulder. He's faster than he looks, but you know his bad knee, and exploit it with a feint to the right. He curses in Norse under his breath. You throw an elbow. He grabs your arm. The world turns sideways. Both of you topple to the ground in a tangled pile of grunts and middle-aged regret. He laughs first. You groan. Your squire helps you both up with 2 hands and 0 sympathy. Your back cricks like a drawbridge. Around the yard, other knights cheer, jeer, or offer unsolicited opinions on your pivot. You note 3 servants watching from an upper window, probably laying bets. Again. A curious fact for the night owls: some training multi-tools, like the quintain, a rotating beam with a shield on one end and a sandbag on the other, were used not just for war practice, but also courtly sport. Hit too slowly and you got walloped with the counterweight. You once saw a knight fly into a barrel. A highlight, really. But the real measure of a knight isn't just physical, it's mental. Controlled aggression paired with temperance, grit balanced by humility. So after grappling, you return to the sword with restraint. You demonstrate drills to a green-livered squire who swings like the sword owes him money. Slowly, you instruct. Teaching others, after all, is part of keeping the code alive. Let's talk about that for a moment. This romanticized idea that all knights lived like noble Jedi isn't entirely correct. Many aspired to that knightly ideal. Sure, courage, courtesy, honor, but plenty also behaved like bratty warlords. Historians still argue whether chivalry was genuinely observed or whether it was more propaganda from the church and the crown to keep these heavily armed testosterone storms from tearing society apart. Back in the yard, someone unfurls a war banner for practice. It's not a real mobilization, but a drill, practicing assembly lines and cavalry formations. Of course, your favorite part approaches: lance training. The weapon is taller than the stables and 3 times as unruly when handled wrong. Your warhorse, a sleek gray destrier named Bramble, is brought forward by a groom. He's dressed in ceremonial saddle gear for practice, and his dark eyes flick toward you with mild disdain. He remembers last week, when you nearly fell off mid-charge. Horses don't forget. You mount with a practiced swing, then nearly slip when your cloak catches on the saddle horn. It's not graceful, but you recover with a heroic ahem and nudge Bramble toward the tilt rail. The lance hovers in your grip, 12 feet of wood, tipped with blunted iron for training. Your squire hands it up like he's presenting a fish to royalty. You adjust, lean forward. Bramble snorts, and then charge. Hooves pound. The wind roars. The quintain looms. You lower the lance, steady, breathing hard, shoulder squared. Crack. The shield on the quintain splinters. The sandbag swings like a furious pendulum, but you cleared it. You circle back, triumphant, or at least not broken. The younger squires gawk. One claps. Bramble tosses his head like he planned the whole thing. You dismount with a bit more dignity than you mounted and hand off the lance. A goblet of watered ale appears in your hand, and someone compliments your form. Decent center of gravity, one murmurs. Incredible for someone your age, another adds. You drink the ale and consider having all of them run laps just out of spite. After a final round of bow drills and dagger practice, the hour comes to a close. Your muscles ache deliciously, your shoulders pulse, and your gloves are caked in fresh dust and old sweat. Perfect. You offer Bramble a few apple slices while he's unsaddled, and try not to look surprised when he nuzzles your armpit affectionately. Or maybe he's just wiping his nose. Horses have no shame. The sun's higher now, casting sharper rays through the battlements. Noon is settling in, and with it, duchy duties, meal politics, and possibly a goose dispute. You stretch your back. It pops alarmingly. Ah, yes. Another successful morning of pretending you're not too old for this. You wipe the sweat from your brow with the sleeve of your surcoat, now damp and dusty from an honest morning's work. There's a pungent aroma wafting in from the kitchen windows. Yes, that unmistakable mix of boiled onions and overcooked greens. Lunch is on the horizon, but before you claim what's rightfully yours, a wooden trencher and a cup of fennel-hinted ale, you've got duties to attend. You head toward the great hall, still limping slightly from your earlier bout with Sir Jorund. The courtyard's quieter now. Squabbling chickens have resumed their mission of total chaos, and a clumsy young squire is struggling to push a handcart that contains what appears to be a goose wearing a ribbon. You pause. It's best not to ask. Inside the keep's hall, your administrative heart, sunlight filters through the narrow stained glass window, casting smudged reds and golds onto the worn flagstone floor. A crier stands to the left, holding a scroll and looking winded. He's been shouting to no audience for at least half an hour, announcing this week's proclamations on grain tithes and pasture rotation. You give him a nod. He keeps shouting. You make your way to the big oak chair at the far end of the room, the one that serves as your temporary throne. It creaks under you, like it's trying to protest your decisions in advance. A long, slightly off-center table stretches before you, where scribes and visitors wait to plead issues, settle arguments, or just complain about firewood. First up, a land dispute. Two peasants, Osric and Emmett, stand before you, red-faced and waving arms. At issue, an extremely disagreeable goat. Or rather, who owns the disagreeable goat, who fed it more, and who it likes better. She comes to my yard, says Osric, stabbing the air with a grubby finger. Aye, but I named her, replies Emmett, waving a withered carrot as evidence. Both argue in thick local dialects that your ears still haven't fully adjusted to. You sigh, glance at your steward, and catch your squire stifling a laugh. With knightly authority and an unhealthy dose of sarcasm, you decree a shared custody arrangement. Mornings with Emmett, evenings with Osric, Sundays off. The goat, standing nearby, sneezes directly onto your boot. It's not all small-scale drama. Next comes a tax issue. A charcoal burner fell behind on payments, citing illness and a poor winter yield. You question him, weigh his sincerity, and decide on mercy, a deferred tithe. He weeps with unexpected enthusiasm. You resist the urge to shift uncomfortably in your seat. A constable approaches next, helmet under one arm, sweaty papers in hand. Bandits have been reported along one of the back roads, the third such report this month. He describes them with relish. Scruffy beards, patchy cloaks, and a suspicious love of sour cider, apparently. You nod, issue a patrol request for the next fair weather day, and make a mental note. Yet another chore for you or your men. Now we're really getting into the heartbeat of your daily role. Not swinging swords, not quoting oaths, but managing. Knights weren't just warriors. Many were also landholders, tax collectors, local judges, and impromptu marriage counselors. Did you know that in some areas, knights also had to provide legal aid to their vassals, provided the matter wasn't too serious? They were expected to act as honest brokers, dispensing wisdom and, supposedly, not favor cousins or crushes. Unsurprisingly, historians still argue whether this mostly worked or utterly descended into corruption and occasional pie-based bribery. And yes, there were pie bribes. Meat pies to smooth over fencing disputes. Pies to curry favor before an audience. Pie was practically medieval currency. You glance at your steward as another peasant mysteriously forgets to bring paperwork, but does offer a steaming eel pasty. Coincidence? Probably not. Once court adjourns, you oversee an inspection around your small holdings. You mount Bramble again, still irritable after that earlier lance charge. He accepts your weight with a heavy snort, the horse version of an eye roll, and starts forward through the side gate, the wood still frost slick in places. You ride slowly toward the grain stores first. 2 thatched barns groan with last year's surplus, across from a paddock where, will issue by you, suspiciously. The steward drips statistics into your ear. Crop tally from last month. Town imports, forecasted to arrive, late again. And an update on the vineyard that may or may not have caught frostbite. You pass villagers along the way. Some tip their hats, some hurry off pretending not to notice you. A few children dart into the path, trying to see the night close up before their parents yank them back by damp sleeves. One particularly brave child shouts, "Sir Treebird," a mocking twist of your family crest. You pause and choose not to smile. Dignity, after all. At the mill, the wheel creaks unconvincingly. You dismount to check the hoist yourself. Clearly, someone's used the wrong rope. Again. You mutter under your breath and direct the miller to replace it before the next thunderstorm makes the whole contraption slide into the creek. Ruling, in short, is a special blend of trial, error, and hoping the guy with the goat doesn't come back next week with a chicken wearing boots. And yet, there's also pride. You are the focal point of justice and order here. This fief, however soggy, goat-infested, and comically disorganized, is under your banner. That crooked tree and resolute falcon may not inspire volumes of epic poetry, but they mean something to you, to your people, and even to that sneezy goat, probably. You circle back to the manor as the sun hits its highest point. A page is ringing the courtyard bell, 2 crisp chimes. Midday mealtime. You dismount, brush a hayseed off your shoulder, and hand Bramble's reins to your squire, who promptly unties them backwards and gets gently tugged into a post. He'll learn. Or not. A final curious note for the day. Some documents suggest that knights were often expected to inspect their tenants' homes at random to check for cleanliness, proper tithe payments, and moral structure. Sounds invasive? It was, though there's debate about how often these surprise checks actually happened, or if they were more of a noble scare tactic than a common habit. Still, nothing like knowing your lord might peek into your cupboard while judging your bannock. By now, your stomach groans. You've survived law, land, and livestock in less than 3 hours. And as you step toward the great hall once more, the scent of roast venison and barley stew drifts through the open door like a night's reward. You're hungry, tired, and longing for exactly one moment to sit without someone asking about goats. You pull open the heavy doors of the great hall, and the scent of midday meal rushes out in greeting. Roast meat, cloves, sour ale, and cabbage that's been boiled into personal surrender. Ah, lunch in the high Middle Ages. The great hall is warm now, not just from the hearths flickering along the walls, but from the low hum of voices, laughter, the scrape of cups on wood, and the discordant tuning of a lute that's not quite ready to be played in public. Servants rush past in purposeful directions, their arms full of trenchers and pitchers, and long tables are already half filled with familiar faces, all trying to look like they aren't racing for the best seats. You nod toward a few nobles, offer a half smile to 2 of the stewards, and make your way to the high table. Your designated chair is somewhere between stately and splintery. It scrapes across stone as you draw it back, and you lower yourself carefully, still sore from both lance drills and that goat debacle. It's time for food, for hierarchy, for supper politics. No plates here, not individual ones anyway. A servant sets down your trencher, a hard, stale round of bread hollowed into a makeshift bowl. Practical, edible, and totally crumb embarrassing. Into this cradle of carbohydrates goes a ladle of barley stew, thick with root vegetables and hunks of venison left over from last night's hunting party. It's coarse, a little salty, and yes, there's probably a bone in there somewhere. Frankly, that's how you know it's authentic. Next to your trencher comes a sticky mound of pottage, an all-purpose dish that's half porridge, half mystery. Each household has its own version, and yours includes leeks, herbs, and historically questionable leftovers. You use the dusty crust of yesterday's bread like a spoon, break it off, soak it, chew. Survival never tasted so blandly competent. Drinks are passed. A communal jug of mild ale, perfectly lukewarm, and a few cups of watered wine sweetened with herbs. You pour carefully. Too much wine in daylight, and someone might challenge you to a duel over salt allocation. To your right, Sir Bennet of Hawes is already elbow deep in what appears to be a spiced meat pie. To your left, seated just barely within arm's length, is Lady Marjorie, who greets you with a perfectly calculated nod. The kind that could mean I'm interested, I'm bored, or I know you forgot your gloves this morning. She delicately picks at her food with thin fingers, feasting on no more than 3 peas and a suspicious spoonful of something beet-colored. You suspect courtly dining for women is less about calories and more about mystery. Conversation drones around you. The younger pages chatter. Night after night mutters about patrols, and at least 3 separate diners launch into complaints about that cheese shipment from the coast. One bard stumbles past, tuning his lute with the elegance of a man who hasn't used a comb since Epiphany. And then, it happens. You spot it. The quail egg incident. A lesser noble down the table, eager, sweaty, dramatic, leans forward to spit a plum pit into his goblet. Unsuccessfully. Said pit ricochets. Lady Essel gasps. A servant yelps. The pit lands in your squire's shoe. There's a long, awkward pause. You blink. Take a slow sip of your wine, then quietly go back to dipping bread into the stew, without comment. Dignity. Always. Now would be a good time to debunk some food myths. While your trenchers are real, the whole everyone ate boiled gruel and drank mead until they passed out myth isn't the whole story. Sure, things were repetitive and blander than your average airport sandwich, but spices were traded and sought after obsessively. Black pepper, saffron, and cloves can make or break a court meal. Your stew today? Probably seasoned with parsley and maybe a hint of ginger. Also, forks are rare things. You eat with your hands, possibly a knife, and occasionally a wooden spoon if you're fancy or tired of burning your fingers. The wealthy might have a basic set of eating tools. Again, rare. But for most people, clean fingers worked fine. Clean, of course, being a relative term. As the meal draws on, you participate in the subtle pageantry of medieval dining. Whose trencher empties fastest, who gets offered second helpings without asking, and who dares to flag down the servant bearing the glazed apple tart without sounding too overeager. Dish after dish appears and vanishes. Boiled beans with thyme, thick slices of dark rye bread, spiced eggs cut open like little golden scrolls. At one point, for theatrical flair, a bowl of marinated fish is served with a single lemon slice, shipped from far to the south. A citrus flourish so exotic, it sparks a minute-long debate about whether fruits are to be feared or worshipped. Then, the entertainment starts. First, the musician gives it another go. The lute buzzes like a bee trapped in a sack, but eventually he wrangles it into a recognizable melody, something vaguely Celtic, deeply sleepy, and somehow both cheerful and melancholy. You tap your foot along, politely. Lady Marjorie doesn't. Naturally, then, a fool makes his entrance. No, not just some prankster, the official court fool, complete with ridiculous motley clothes and bells stitched into his collar like an anxious cat. His juggling act is subpar, but he wins the crowd with a surprisingly sharp impersonation of Lord Bertrand, whose unique habit of sneezing mid-sentence deserves theatrical reenactment. You almost spit out your drink. Still, the show must move on, and so must you. A page approaches discreetly and whispers that the steward suggests you review the storage orders for next week's feast. Translation: something's missing. Again, probably the eels. It's always the eels. You rise from the table with a parting glance toward Lady Marjorie, who continues eating her beets like they hold state secrets. She doesn't look up. Then again, she doesn't have to. Before you go, one last fun fact. Some noble households collected carved wooden trenchers after meals, dried them, then gave them to the poor. It's called alms bread, and while it sounds generous, it was often older than some of the garments you wear. Still, charity, however stale, is part of the nightly expectation. You too sometimes participate in these small distributions. You like to think it balances out all the accidental punching. The midday sun now glows through the high hall windows. The air is heavy with spices, roasted meat, and thick anticipation for the housekeeping tasks that will, inevitably, invade your next hour. You stretch your arms with a groan that echoes off the stone. Lunch might be over, but the day is far from done. You still have armor to try on. You descend the stairwell from the hall into the vault room with the kind of slowly bracing exhale you usually save for winter river crossings or dental matters, which, in your case, is the same thing. It's cooler down here. The stone walls thick. The light minimal, but sharp as it filters in through thin slits above. This is where your armor waits. Not quite entombed, but certainly posing like it's on display for a bored ghost with discerning taste. In the corner, your squire fumbles with buckles and leather straps, one eye on you, and one on a breastplate that keeps slipping off the stand like it's had enough of medieval life. He's already set out your gear on a wooden bench: mail, helmet, greaves, a gorget, and that accursed articulated elbow piece that always pinches wrong. Now let's be clear. Today isn't a full armored parade or a joust. Today you're doing test fittings, maintenance, and maybe a quick ride in partial plate to make sure nothing creaks, chafes, or spontaneously falls off in front of Lady Marjorie. Again, you begin with the gambeson. It's thick, quilted, and already smells like last week's regrets. Its purpose? Cushioning. Without it, wearing armor would turn even the sturdiest knight into a human bruise. You tie it tight, let it settle around your shoulders, and already feel warmer than any responsible person ought to be inside stone walls. Then comes the chainmail hauberk. Your squire helps. It takes two just to manage its wriggly, unforgiving weight. Thousands of tiny metal rings, interlinked like gossip and just as hard to escape once you're in the middle of it. It lands on your shoulders with a muffled clump, dragging your arms downward like iron sleeves filled with wet sand. This one smells nicer than usual, you offer dryly. I used rosemary water, like you said, your squire says, proud. You inhale. Still smells like a minor dragon took a nap in it, but sure, points for effort. Did you know that a full hauberk could weigh as much as 40 pounds? That's like walking around with a medieval toddler clinging to your torso all day. And if you're thinking it sounds exhausting, you're right. But it's nothing compared to the plate armor still lurking behind you, gleaming wickedly in the corner, like it's waiting for its moment on stage. But not yet. Next come greaves, those shin protectors made of shaped steel, and sabatons, the decorative and functional foot armor that look like armored slippers drawn by someone who's never seen feet. Hooking them takes finesse, and your squire inevitably gets one backwards, which earns him a deadpan look that says, "Squire, if I lose circulation again, I will not be writing a kind recommendation letter." Then, breastplate and backplate. He lifts it over your head like he's baptizing you into the church of unholy shoulder pain, and laces the sides under your arms with firm, jerking motions that probably weren't necessary, but definitely put him in a better mood. Now, we get to the classic problem. Mobility. You try to bend forward. Clunk. Try again. Clunk, clank, click. You look like an apologetic marionette. Flexing is not effortless. Need the vim braces? He asks. For full testing, you reply. Unless I decide to become a left-handed noble statue. They go on last, just above your gloves. Elbows locked in. You roll your shoulders. The whole setup is manageable, but only just. You take a few steps. Clunk. Your knees knock slightly. You feel like a tall, militant teapot. And yet, it works. You can breathe. The weight is there, yes, but it's well distributed. Your armor was made by a proper smith, custom fit to your build on account of your rank and coin purse. Not every knight had bespoke plate, mind you. Many wore piecemeal editions over old mail, layering like medieval onions. Only the wealthiest could afford full suits that allowed for flexibility and theatrical flexing. You draw your sword and test a few deliberate swings. The blade catches the torchlight beautifully with each arc, and your joints sing in muted protest, but you don't lose balance. That's the test. Armor should turn a man into a tank, not a toppling wardrobe. Historians still argue whether full plate was ever worn day to day during non-combat hours, or if it was usually held back for field and tournament settings. Judging by the sweat forming at the back of your neck, just standing here, you vote firmly on the side of saved for special occasions. You grab your helmet, an open-faced bassinet today, so you don't feel like you're yelling into a chamber pot, and settle it on your head. The slight shift in pressure changes the way you hear everything. The clinking floor steps, the flutter of a sparrow in the rafters, your squire gently knocking over a bucket, all now muted, dreamlike. The helmet encloses your world like a steel whisper. Then comes the moment of vanity. You swing around to the polished iron plate hanging on the wall. It's warped and scratched and doubles as your unofficial mirror. In full armor, you look 10% more imposing, 20% more noble, and 90% more likely to accidentally take out a dessert table if you turn too fast at a banquet. Impressive, uncomfortable, necessary. One more lap around the stable path, you say. Your voice echoes slightly in the helmet. Test the balance. The squire nods and scurries ahead to prep Bramble, forging once again into the unspoken battle between man and very moody warhorse. You trudge outside in your clanking glory. The guards salute, though you suspect it's part respect, part amusement. Walking in plate armor does not precisely scream grace. But still, it turns heads. Outside now, the sun hits you like a forge door swinging open. You are immediately, undeniably, sweating. Every step on the gravel path rings out. Bramble neighs a greeting, whether it's because he's happy to see you or already annoyed by everything you're wearing. You can't be sure. You mount up, slower this time, because lifting an armored leg over a saddle is neither speedy nor smooth. Your squire tries not to laugh. He fails. Once astride, though, it's perfect. The armor settles into alignment. Your back straightens, your arms loosen. Now, you feel like a knight, not a brass golem from a bard's fever dream. The wind rakes cool fingers through the eye holes of your helmet. You exhale. You trot the outer ring of the stables, drawing the eye of nearly every stable boy and passing peasant. You look absurd, heavy, noble, shiny, unstoppable, all at once. A moment of quiet pride. You're wearing the weight of centuries, the signature of your status, your battlefield skin. And despite the itch, the noise, the risk of being used as a lightning conductor, you would wear it again tomorrow. Back at the vault, your squire helps ease you out piece by piece, breath coming easier with every buckle undone. Your tunic underneath is soaked completely through. You feel 20 pounds lighter. He polishes the breastplate reflexively. Do you ever wonder, you remark casually, how anyone made it through summer in this cursed thing? He smirks. Cold fig sauce under the arms, which is either a brilliant hack or just something he invented 15 seconds ago. You nod solemnly anyway, just in case. You leave the vault behind with red lines from straps winding around your forearms, like snakes in your tunic, freshly clinging to your back, like a second, sweatier skin. The armor fitting is over for now. But your day? Not even close to done. Out in the courtyard, a stable boy sprints across the gravel, breathless and dusty, waving a small banner, like he's late to his own knighting ceremony. "My lord," he pants. A rider from the North Road reports a broken cart, says it blocked trade past the ford, and there were voices in the trees. Voices in the trees? That's either thieves or druids, both a hassle. You stare blankly at the sunlit horizon. A patrol, then. You were hoping to sneak in a nap, or a nap while sitting upright and pretending to study grain forecasts. Not today. You call for Bramble, still half wet from the test trot, and he gives you the world's most tired horse sigh as he's brought around. Again. You mount, ignoring your inner thigh's protests, and ready your riding coat, your lighter sword belt, and a short spear. Not for battle, just for presence. Pointy things calm tense situations, oddly enough. 2 guards mount up beside you, their spears strapped lazily across their backs, and your squire trails behind on a pack horse weighed down with everything you might just in case need. Rope, oilskin, spare jerkins, 2 apples, and a suspiciously enthusiastic ferret that may or may not have snuck aboard. Your patrol follows the outer trail through your holdings, where farmland stretches wide and speckled, cow-dotted meadows, slow-growing wheat, and the occasional sheep looking extremely judgmental. You pass 2 plowmen arguing about oxen, arguing with the oxen, in fact, and a group of children leaping from a haystack yelling, "Incoming!" like it's warfare. You ride. The afternoon air hangs still, warm on your skin, but edged with the sharp scent of pine and distant manure. The rustle of trees frames your thoughts, the creak of saddle leather, lulling you into that strange space between caution and boredom. Patrol life, romantic in the ballads, mildly tedious in real life. About 40 minutes in, you find the cart. It's exactly where the messenger described. Sideways, in a rut near the crossing, its front wheel shattered like a biscuit under a boot. The 2 traders, visibly annoyed and mutually sunburnt, are trying to extract a barrel without bursting it open. One sees you and instantly shifts into my lord mode, hands out and voice theatrical. "No bandits, then?" you ask, eyeing the nearby trees for suspicious rustling. "No, my lord, but..." The man gulps. "There were... whispers..." "Whispers. Yes, my lord. Moving through the underbrush. Talking. Not human talk exactly, but talk." You exchange a long, silent look with your guard. One of them snorts. Magic may not be part of you or in your practical world view, but fear still travels fast out here, especially when most villagers think cryptids are part of the regular seasonal cycle, like frost or bad barley. You dismount, approach the trees, and peer into the underbrush. Silence. Just when you're ready to call it a limited hallucination, a twig snaps. You whirl your spear up, just in time to catch sight of the culprit. 3 children. Cousins, by the look of it. Mushrooms and pine cones stashed in their cloaks, wide-eyed at being caught herding squirrels instead of doing chores. One blurts out, "We were ogres," before bolting. You shake your head, order a quick assist for the cart, and mount back up. The trees give nothing more, except possibly a tiny, judgmental squirrel. Annoyed traders seen to. Mystery whispers resolved. But now you are, by default, too far out to head straight back, which means the loop continues. Time for a few stops. The Mill Reef, the Hunter's Lodge, and the tiny riverside hamlet still known exclusively by the nickname Duck Bottom. Don't ask. At the lodge, the forester presents you with 3 snares holding rabbits, 2 suspiciously empty bottles of wine, and a complaint about poachers hunting pheasants at night. Describe them, you say. Too clean to be locals, he replies, and one smelled like peaches. A noble, then. Nothing's more suspicious than summer fruit off season. You send word ahead with your squire, who seems thrilled to sprint up a steep trail with a hastily scribbled warning in hand. He'll be fine. Probably. As you reach the small hamlet, the mothers eye you warily. Not because you're a threat, but because your arrival might accidentally bring problems. Nights attract drama like candles attract tidy, winged death. Still, you offer calm words, inspect a stockpile of logs, compliment someone's piglets, and promise to send a carpenter to inspect the weir before midsummer. The locals seem duly impressed that you remembered last year's flooding. And now, back to the saddle. Here's a lesser-known nightly fact. Patrol rides could take whole daylight stretches, especially for those overseeing dispersed fiefs. You weren't just a warrior. You were a roving mayor, taxman, magistrate, and occasionally marriage counselor. Retirement plan? Terrible. But job security? Excellent. No one ignored the guy in chainmail riding a warhorse over their cabbage patch. You make one more detour. The roadside shrine to St. Wulfric, patron of weather, cheese merchants, and, strangely, ulcers. You stop a minute to murmur thanks for a smooth patrol and minimal drama. One of your guards leaves a coin on the tiny stone altar. The other tucks a folded piece of paper behind a candle. Either a prayer or a love note. Could be both. On the final leg home, the air cools. Long shadows stretch across the dirt path. Your guards whistle a slow, wandering tune that sounds uncannily like The Maiden and the Milk Bucket. You try to hum along. Bramble does not approve. I think, one of the guards mutters over his shoulder, we're being followed. You raise a brow, then look behind, and sure enough, half a mile down the road, that same lonely ferret from the pack horse earlier, trotting along, still with the string of dried figs one of the serfs gave him. Clearly, he's joined the ranks. You shrug, let it follow. Every night needs a mascot. Back at the manor walls, light fades to gold and soft plum. Torches begin to flicker. You dismount slowly, every muscle creaking, and hand Bramble off to your still somehow spunky squire. Another circuit completed. No bandits, no sword fights. Just a cart, some rumors, and a moderately traumatized squirrel. A quiet victory. Your boots thud against the worn timber floors as you pass through the castle's outer gatehouse, freshly dusted with the earthy perfume of the open road. Sweat, leather, hay, and something that might be either roasted turnips or your warhorse having a midlife crisis. Sunset bleeds across the sky, casting streaks the color of dried blood and ripe melon across the horizon. You're home. Sort of. Until tomorrow, at least. You peel off your riding gloves with a well-practiced sigh and toss them to your squire, who misses by a full arm's length and tries to act like dropping them was part of some elaborate bow. You nod approvingly anyway and stretch, shoulders groaning in response, and begin the daily ritual of not limping, even though your body whispers a gentle, "You've made mistakes." mostly involving bramble saddle and your inability to dodge thorn bushes like you could 15 years ago. You skip the inner hall and head straight for the guard posts. Time for your end-of-day perambulation. It's 1 part habit, 1 part defense, and 1 part making sure that Sir Arnold hasn't yet again, accidentally, fallen asleep during his tower shift. The scent of smoke from torches and pitch-dipped arrows drifts on the breeze. It's cozy, comforting, slightly ominous. The first post you stop at is the Western Tower, your favorite, due mostly to the moss-covered stair that makes it slightly treacherous and exciting. You nod to the posted guard, a young lad named Thibaut, who looks like he's still waiting for his voice to catch up with his armor. He's peering intently at the horizon, holding onto his spear with the grip of a man imagining his moment of heroic fame in the next bardic saga. "Anything unusual?" you ask. "Only the sky, my lord," he says. "It's bluish-purple." Then, realizing you expected a real answer, he adds, "Oh, and someone lit a fire out past the tree line. Probably a herder. Or witches." "Witches again?" "Year's End, my lord. That's when they practice." "Ah, of course." You nod solemnly, not at all sure if he's joking. But his boots are polished and his stance is firm, so you clap him on the shoulder and move on. Next comes the gatehouse. Engineer types rest here. People with crossbows, yawns, and the unsettling ability to nap upright. You find Sir Arnold right where you feared you might. Eyes closed, chin on chest, clutching a tankard that definitely didn't come from the mess hall. You stand quietly for a moment, then cough. He jerks awake so violently he nearly launches the tankard over the wall. "Oh, my lord, I was praying." You pause. Consider the sincerity. "For what?" "For alertness. Clearly it worked. Just finished." He bows deeply. Too deeply. His helmet slides crooked. You leave it. He's good on the field. Good in a siege. Terrible with benches and coffee. You wander along the walkway of the parapets, watching the world fade from gold into charcoal. The lanterns are being lit along the inner courtyard, dangling iron cages filled with waxy tallow and flickering flames. The blacksmith's forge glows red near the stables. Somewhere, you hear the whinny of a horse, a distant laugh, and the very particular tune of someone playing an out-of-tune recorder with the confidence of a man who's never been offered feedback. "That's probably Allard again," you say aloud, and the page trailing you nods. His high note sounds like a dying duck now. "Well," you reply, "that was Allard's actual war cry at the Battle of Brevin, so technically accurate." The walls are solid. The guards are posted. All things considered, your little castle chunk of the world is running surprisingly smoothly tonight. You almost relax, until you reach the eastern rampart and find a hole. Small, suspicious. At first, it looks like a rabbit tunnel, but rabbits don't stack 6 flat stones along the edge as if marking a ladder. No, sir. Not unless the rabbits are unionizing. You motion to the steward. "Send a mason and a torch. We've got clearly sentient rodents, again." He looks at you blankly, unsure if sarcasm is being used. Spoiler, it is, but still. You end the patrol at the chapel wall, a final check to ensure no one snuck over the perimeter with intent to stealth harvest your herb garden. Again. Remember that incident? 1 monk, 8 leaks, poor judgment, and a midnight stew recipe. You tighten security after that. Night has officially arrived. Torches crackle on sconces. The leathery flap of a lone bat passes overhead. From within the castle, You hear the main gate's inner bolt groan into place, a long iron hiss and thud that seals the world into distinct categories. Us in here, and everything else out there. There's a strange comfort in it. Let's pause for a moment in the haze of torchlight and admit something. Castles weren't just military strongholds. They were towering symbols of control. For the people living outside the walls, those stone towers meant safety, or power, or suppression, depending on your social rank and last tax payment. But for people inside, they were protection and prison wrapped into one. Tall walls kept enemies out, but kept restlessness in too. The night shift passes in transition now. You hear boots echoing on walkways as the new guards take their places. Brass horns sound a soft ritual, all is well. A bell rings thrice from the bell tower. You catch a glimpse of a servant lighting the last of the stairwell lamps that wind down from the north tower. So tiny from up here, just a flicker moving downward like a drifting star. And somewhere below, your squire trips over a crate. Again, you sigh. Guardian of the realm, patroller of shadows, trip monitor. As you head back down, the mood within the inner bailey shifts. People move quieter now, clinking less, whispering more. Torches throw long shadows. Dinner has ended. Doors are latched. Even the geese in the pens have settled into their nightly grumbling. You pass a small bench where two maids sit darning hose by flame light, their fingers moving with skill born from years of stabbing their own thumbs. You nod to them in passing, and one blushes furiously. Hope, or maybe fear. It's hard to say. Back at your chamber, the hearth has been relit. The fire greets you with the warmth of an old friend who smells like soot and cooked beef. Your squire has laid out your cloak and a basin of tepid water. He's included a mint leaf in it. Where he found a mint plant in late spring is a mystery you're too tired to solve. You sit, take off your boots, listen. And outside, the castle breathes. Wood creaks, stone shifts, voices fade. You live in a world built of cracked rock and long shadows, caught forever in that space between legend and livestock reports. And as you stretch your legs and twirl one aching ankle, you whisper a silent promise. Let's just try not to have any ghosts tonight. Historically speaking, odds are only 60 to 40. The fire clicks softly as it settles into itself, eating through the last inch of birchwood like a contented dog. You lean back in your chair, still not quite comfortable, but the kind of wooden discomfort you've grown used to over the years. Legs stretched, goblet in hand, and the evening air floating through the shuttered window above you, thick with the scent of smoke, damp stone, and thyme from the little garden patch below. A knock, brief, polite, followed by a pause long enough to signal politics. You sigh and straighten your tunic. Enter. The door creaks open, and in steps Lady Celestine's steward, dressed in immaculately creased layers that suggest he doesn't bend for anything short of fire or royal decree. "My lord," he says, with the inflection of someone who would rather be anywhere else. The Lady Celestine requests company at the Falcon House. Her household has arrived from the west, and refreshments are being arranged. And there it is. Nobility, hospitality. You don't get to just wash the day off and go to bed after scowling at guard towers and breaking up peasant goose feuds. No. Now it's time to attend. Because here in your modest corner of the realm, you're not just a knight. You're the nearest thing to a host, diplomat, and esteemed snack sampler. You rise, crack your neck discreetly, and signal for your squire, who appears so quickly It's either impressive or terrifying. He already has your cloak. 5 minutes, my lord, he says, slipping your sword belt into place without being asked. I'll delay the refreshments with a kitchen misunderstanding. Too capable. You're either proud or scared. You walk through the keep's hallways, now lit only by wall-mounted clay lanterns and flickering torches. Their shadows dance against the tapestry scenes that always seem more dramatic by firelight. Knights slaying dragons, queens fainting at weddings, one very unclear image of a man headbutting a goose. You still have debates about that one during feast downtime. Outside, the Falcon House glows golden, an annex near the southern edge of the keep, half aviary, half social chamber, where nobles come not to just admire birds, but to judge each other's titles by how aggressively their hawks perch. Lady Celestine stands with a tall, silver goblet in one hand and a falcon's jest strap in the other. She's dressed in feathers, not literally, though if someone told you her cloak was made of pheasant fluff, you wouldn't be shocked. She greets you with a smile that's sharp around the corners and utterly sincere in its judgment. Sir Falcon Tree? She nods somewhat playfully. That's your heraldry again, haunting you. The proud bird and the lopsided tree. You smile through it. Her guests are a sprinkle of regional noble families. 2 barons with hair like sculpted parchment, their wives critiquing each other with the psychic violence of silent stares, and 3 unmarried daughters, all pretending they weren't. Just arguing about who you might talk to first. You take a goblet. Sip. Spiced black currant wine. Too warm. Too sweet. But facial neutrality is part of the code. Shall we walk the line? Someone suggests. And so you begin the noble pastime of falcon admiration. You stop at each perch, admire the birds like you understand avian performance metrics, and ask vague but respectful questions like, is she molting early this year? And do her flights still arc high by third call? Falconry, to be fair, is a traditional nightly pursuit, and yes, it is genuinely respected. Hunting with birds wasn't just for fun. It was a medieval display of control over nature, skill, and serious budget. Trained falcons were insanely expensive, often gifted between kings and frequently stolen in morally gray nighttime exchanges. Yours, an aging peregrine named Azure, is prone to glaring at everyone but you. You visit her perch, stroke her breast carefully, avoiding the beak, because no one wants a nose scar from a pigeon's angrier cousin, and offer her a tidbit of fresh quail liver. Someone notes how well she responds to you. You nod modestly. Azure responds well to anyone who feeds her quail livers, which isn't everyone, but you're not about to explain that. Between falcon commentary and social crossfire, you nod through several political remarks disguised as bird humor. Things like, he's molted 3 times this season, much like our absentee treasurer. Or, she wouldn't take the hood until her last flight. Quite a metaphor, don't you think? You do not laugh at any of these, but you smile, politely. Once. That's the quota. Outside, torches ring the edges of the falcon yard. Servants drift through with platters of sugared dates, goat cheese turnovers, and one tray that looks suspiciously like it might contain those onion pastries that gave you nightmares last month. You decline gently, offering your goblet for a refill instead. Something safer about overindulging in drink when the alternative is medieval, hot onion regret. Then come the dances. Not for you, not yet. but someone's brought a lute, again, maybe Allard, and a gut-string fiddle sharp enough to summon geese from the next village over. A lady begins singing a ballad, softly, beautifully, about a knight who wore his sweetheart's favor into war and lost both shield and heart. You pretend not to look at Lady Marjorie during verse 3. She pretends not to look at you, pretending not to look. These moments are required. Diplomacy here is a dessert tray. Bite into the wrong one, and things fall apart. Hospitality isn't just tradition. It's surveillance. It's grooming alliances and soft, sentimental chaos. Friendships get kindled here. Engagements arranged. Enemies quietly noted. And speaking of that, Lord Myron, the younger baron with the suspicious widow count, approaches with all the subtlety of a cat aiming for a saucer it does not own. "My lord," he starts, "have you given thought to spring games? I hear your field is excellent for such performances. You know where this is going. He wants to host a tournament on your land, which essentially means you provide funding, field, and cleanup crews, and he gets to watch his nephew fall off a horse in public. You neither confirm nor deny. You sip and give a neutral, a fair possibility. Translation: I'll think about it when my headache retires. Soon, the courtiers shift indoors. The falcons are taken to their night perches, hooded one by one. Lady Celestine thanks you for attending, like someone who's just checked a to-do box in elegant calligraphy, and you bow slightly, formally, but not too stiffly. The right blend of grace and Ione armor. As you drift away from the firelit pavilion, the music trails off behind you. The night air greets you again. Cooler now, clean feeling, full of the honest smells of grass and wood smoke, and corners of the world not yet filled with nonsense. Your squire awaits nearby, torch in hand. "Anything explode?" you ask. "Not unless you count poetry." You nod. Back to the keep then. The fire's low now, barely more than a cradle of glowing embers in the hearth's heart. You sit there, wrapped in your robe, feet tucked under you like a retired lion, tired but proud. Your eyes drift toward the fringes, lids heavier now, as if weighted with every remembered swing of a sword and every mile bramble galloped beneath you. This is the final light of the day, the hour when the castle is no longer yours, but the shadows. With flickering torches guttering out and the servants long since tucked into their straw-filled beds, only the stones beneath your boots remain awake, cooling back into silence. Through the window slit, the moon hangs fat and low, blurred slightly by chill mist low on the hills, the kind that makes you think of long rides through sleeping valleys, or campaigns fought deep into the night with only torchlight and breath fog to keep you company. You rise slowly, one last stretch before bed, and move toward the sword stand. There it leans, patient as always, your main blade, the one marked by nicks along its edge and smooth where your palm has gripped it most. You've carried it through at least 7 campaigns, depending on whether you count that chicken theft incident in the borderlands as a full campaign. You run a finger across the fuller and pause. "I'll need you again soon," you murmur. The blade, of course, says nothing. It never does. But it knows. As you lower yourself into bed, finally, you take a slow breath, one of those deep, chest-loosening breaths that reminds you your ribs are still intact, and you've made it through another stirring, clambering, bruising turn of the sun. And your mind, half tucked into sleep already, replays again those images you collected all day. The wind curling through arrow loops, the crush of boots on gravel, the feel of sword pommel against your saddle thigh, the goat named Marjorie that somehow ended up in the mess hall during lunch, the giggling of squires as they pretended the guard tower was haunted, complete with ghost impressions that honestly need work. Even now, you can still hear the tail end of a love song humming in the hallway. The voice is old, croaky, possibly Allard again, or the steward if he's feeling sentimental. It's slow and sweet. The chorus, one you vaguely remember from your youth. Something about aching lances and lost embraces. Very subtle and not at all romantic until the third verse declares, "She rode off with his squire and 3 goats in the end." Real art. You smile, sleep tugging now at your ankles, rising like warm bathwater from toes to temples. Because this day, this ordinary, splendid, exhausting, goat-interrupted day, is the kind you secretly treasure. No sieges, no deaths, just life. Real, raw, full life. Because while history scrolls its grand tales of conquest and pageantry, most nights lived like this. Schedules that shifted with sunfall, reputations balanced precariously on soup stains and horse gossip, and the gentle burden of being important for everyone else's peace of mind. You hold memories close now. You see old battlefields and laugh lines, lovers' glances over velvet goblets. Your first sword, too heavy. Your first kill, too quick. Your first poem, too embarrassing to recall, even now. And somewhere in your dreams, the falcon azure circles overhead, casting even sharper shadows than your enemies ever did. And yes, you think briefly of tomorrow, of whether that sidelong glance from Lady Marjorie means anything at all, of whether your squire will ever learn how to tie a chest harness without choking you faint, of the sweet relief of not having to settle one more dispute over watering rights for 3 disputed feet of ditch. But that's all in Dawn's care. For now, you're not Sir Anything, not a rider, not a judge, not a host, nor a hero. You're just you, warm, safe, resting. Somewhere, a candle is pinched out with a gentle hiss, and the final torch in the corridor sputters into darkness. The world turns quiet. It's the softest hour, where dreams creep soft as linen, where the stone sighs under sleeping bodies, where warriors turn into whispers, where knights become just men. And with eyelids fluttering closed and shadows cooling on the glass, you let this final, fading image settle gently in your mind like falling snow. Your crest, bird and crooked tree, fluttering in the light wind of a new morning not yet born. So, there you are. Your armor's off. The keep is quiet. No more goats to mediate. No more patrols to ride. Just the warmth of the firelight painting soft golden flickers behind your closed eyes. Even as the castle rests, the stories you've gathered today spin gently in your mind, like pennants in evening wind. This time was yours. You might still feel the shape of the sword at your hip, even as it rests across the room, like how the sea stays in your ears, even after the boat's been docked. You remember the weight of your mail, the rhythm of your horse's stride, the laughter at the dinner table, the sting of that rosemary soapy water, and the embroidered linen robe that, if we're honest, just might be the most underrated part of knighthood. And now, the fire is ember deep, the air is still, and your breath moves gentle, steady, like a banner rocking in moonlight. You don't need to dream of dragons tonight. You were the knight. You did the thing. And tomorrow Tomorrow can bring whatever it wants. Right now, you're off duty. So settle a little deeper under your blanket. Let the day roll backwards, like drawbridge chains relaxing, castle gates slowly swinging closed. All is calm. All is well. The war horses sleep. The fires sigh. And outside, under the stars, the crooked tree and proud-eyed birds still keep watch. Good night, noble one. You did plenty. Let the silence hold you now. Let it carry you gently into sleep. Sweet dreams.